So principles of reinforcement have some implications for teachers as well as for that homeschooling parent. First, a principle of reinforcement itself. Many of the things that we do are going to gain some kind of reward. Sometimes it's money, it's approval. Sometimes it's even that self-satisfaction, that really good feeling you get when you accomplish something. But behavior that's followed by a reward is going to become more frequent. And behavior that is not followed by a reward will become less frequent. Our goal here is to be able to change the type of implication or the type of that reward to be inside that self-satisfaction. The implication is that if we want to assure a certain kind of behavior is going to be learned and continue to occur, we need to build those reinforcing consequences into our program. Second is looking at defining a reinforcement by experience. So regardless of how appropriate or desirable a reward is going to be for the adult, the leader, it may not be a great reinforcement for the child. So the object is called the reinforcement for a particular reason, because it needs to reinforce the behavior. It needs to be something that is pleasant and desirable. So our implication here is that if we want to assure that the behavior is going to be learned and continue to learn, then we need to determine which consequences are worth reinforcement and the effect it's going to have on the behavior. What is the reinforcer going to be, and how are we going to define it? Looking at extinction, remember that is if no reinforcement follows. It's going to be extinguished. It's going to become less frequent. Our implication is that we really want to continue a certain kind of behavior, then we need to discover what consequences are really reinforcing the misbehavior to begin with, and then prevent those from occurring. We're looking at a delay of reinforcement. So the more quickly that we reinforce and that we use consequences, the more effective they're going to be in strengthening a behavior. Our implication is that our teacher should attempt to really provide an immediate reinforcement. This applies for all adults in many situations, is that you need an immediate reinforcement. Looking at that schedule, when it's first being learned, we want to make sure that it's being reinforced consistently and quickly, very fast, right? Because we want to remember that we don't want to delay it very long. However, after it's being learned, we want to be able to delay it a little bit and gradually remove it. We want to be able to make it more intermittent. So we want to remember that the praise, the approvals, whatever rewards we're using should become less frequent. And we want to be able to devote more time to the student when they're learning the new things. Looking at that differential reinforcement, no matter how well or how bad our child performs, we want to make sure that we can do better. We're going to increase it. We want to make sure that the good is rewarded and that the worst performances are simply ignored. We want to make sure that we are really encouraging that good behavior that we're looking for. We want to make sure that we are not inadvertently reinforcing a negative behavior. Let's look at incremental steps. We want to make small steps because you remember that behavior changes are going to take time. Motivation is going to take time. And attempts to change behavior is not going to happen all of a sudden. It's going to be very, very slow. And the probability that our student is going to perform correctly immediately is really not going to happen. We need to keep in mind that we're going to be able to take small steps to increase that behavior. So during this time, a leader or teacher, the homeschooling parent needs to really make a careful analysis and assessment of what's working and what's not working, and be able to modify the plan, modify the reinforcement in order to encourage the correct behavior. Lastly, let's look at the principle of our negative consequences. And these are consequences that, remember, that they're not liked, they're not desired, and because of that, it's going to suppress the behavior. And it's not really going to eliminate it, though. It will suppress it. So we need to make sure that when we are using that negative consequence, that it's going to suppress a behavior, but you need to replace it with something else. And that's what's going to get rid of the negative behavior then. Our implication is that if we need to or we have to use these negative reinforcements, then we need to be very careful about how we are modifying the behavior to use a positive one. And that new positive behavior needs to be reinforced immediately.